Welcome to Storm Tracker, your eye on the storm of your Carolina Hurricanes, and your home for the best insight and analysis to keep you totally informed on what's happening with the Canes. Whether it's the latest news on the ice or off the ice, we've got you covered. Now let's begin. Here's your host, Tom Ray.
Well, what a season for the Carolina Hurricanes. You know, the Canes had a tough summer last year. A lot of free agents moved on. And Eric Tulsky had some serious work to try to get the lineup set for the Canes heading into this year. A lot of folks didn't expect much from the Canes, but guess what? They hit the Eastern Conference Finals, and they actually won a game against the champion Florida Panthers. But the Canes need to do some serious work this summer if they're going to compete against that Panther team again, because they're the standard in the NHL right now. And of course, the Panthers did great work as well this summer, re-signing Sam Bennett, Aaron Ekblad, and Brad Marchand, actually to 6 years. That's quite a story. So they're going to be tough, and they are definitely going to be the favorite. So Eric Tulsky and crew had their work cut out for them this summer. We talked about the fact that Tulsky's got lots to work with this year. We mentioned in our last podcast that he has $28.4 million to spend and 20 of 23 roster spots set. He was in a situation with 29 draft picks over the next 4 years, including 6 firsts. He had some top prospects. We talked a little bit about Scott Morrow and Bradley Nadeau, who are on the top prospect team in the AHL. Quite a feat, because there hasn't been an NHL team that's had 2 players on that prospect team before. So the Canes in good shape. And finally, we mentioned that, hey, a lot of the Canes are signed for future. Key Canes are signed for future long terms. And we talked about Svechnikov, Aho, Jarvis, Slavin, and even Kotkaniemi. All of those guys on long-term deals. So lots to work with. So as we headed into the draft, a lot of anticipation for the Canes. I'm wondering, what was Eric going to do this year? So the draft, that was interesting too. And Aaron, what did you see in the draft?
Well, I had a couple thoughts about the draft. First of all, I was one of those people who thought it would be interesting to sit through the decentralized draft. And so I actually watched the first day. And by watched, I mean I had it on in the background, because as everyone who did watch it knows, it became an agonizing bit of non-entertainment television. So even though a lot of the GMs really liked it, they liked being able to sit around and discuss players and prospects openly. They liked being able to have those conversations without worrying that the guys at the next table were listening in. And they liked not having to do the travel and then turn around and come back in time for free agency. I think for the viewers, there's going to have to be some changes made to how they do that. As far as the Canes go, they did get all the way down to their first-round draft pick, and as most of us anticipated, they traded it for more picks in the second round. To me, the most interesting and surprising pick, if you want to go with that, is Charlie Cerrato. I hope I'm saying his name correctly.
Yes.
The young centerman from who is an overager. He's 20 years old. He's still in college. He's going to go back to college probably this year. I like the pick because I think that you have a player here that if he pans out, and this is always a big if with anybody, second round or beyond, you could have somebody who comes in like a Jack Drury, who was also a second round draft pick, or even Jake Evans in Montreal, who was a college pick who took a long time, to finish school and get into the league. But they've become very solid fourth line centermen, and that would be something that I could see this pick maybe panning out to be. But that was my main impression, is that they definitely need to fix the broadcast and make it more entertaining. But that the Canes did do a lot of good work by trading that draft pick down and getting more selections, because with a draft like this, the class was kind of weak overall. There weren't a lot of surefire NHLers below about the first, maybe 2/3 of the first round. So why not, increase your chances with quantity, which has been the Canes strategy for several years.
The one that sounds like he's really intriguing is, and I don't know how to say his name because I've just been reading all the names, but it's Ryabkin or
Ivan Ryabkin. Ivan Ryabkin.
Ryabkin.
Yeah. Yes.
He just seems like a really interesting story because it seems like he has just skill for days, but there are a lot of question marks on the off ice part of things. And being a part of the Canes organization, how can they kind of smooth out some of those rough spots for him off the ice and then take advantage and develop those strong skill sets on the ice? So that seemed to me to be the most interesting storyline as far as the picks were concerned. But lots of Russians, of course, as is the Canes MO. And so now Ryabkin, he's been playing in North America, if I'm didn't
Yes, he was in the USHL
that.
with Muskegon. And of course the Canes love USHL guys. So yes. And he tore it up, by the way.
But for the rest of them, that means that they can stay with their clubs in the KHL until they're ready to come over, just like we've seen with Nikishin, or we might have some others like Kaziv with the goalie doing some NHL time, as Kochekov did as well before they come up to the NHL. But either way, the Canes seem to have a lot of success and a lot of good plans with their Russian prospects, and they're not afraid to sign them, while a lot of other teams shy away because of the uncertainty of will they come over, won't they come over. But lots of good options, it seems like, all over, from goalie and the forwards and the D, and I'll be interested to see how they develop.
Well, a couple of thoughts. First of all, on Ryabkin, I had mentioned Ryabkin as a wild card even at 29. So I was all over Ryabkin before we got him. Actually, Corey Pronman, who writes for The Athletic, said this about Ryabkin. He has a ton of skill and ability to improvise with the puck. He sees the ice at a high level and makes difficult passes consistently. At times, he competes quite hard and looks to use his body to win pucks. He's a guy he's 5'11", he's 200 pounds, he's stocky as heck. He had a tough start last year. A lot of folks had him in the first round. In fact, some had him in the first, in the top 10 at different points because of his skill. As you mentioned, it's off the charts. But he's a guy that's got to work on consistency. He's got to work on his 200-foot game, and that's fine. And he'll get a chance to do that. And I think that's all good stuff. So I think Ryabkin was a steal. You mentioned Cerrato. An interesting thing on Charlie Cerrato, he's another guy that, missed 2 drafts he passed through. As a freshman, he had a big year. He's the top scorer in the NCAA with Penn State. He's a guy that is one of those hardworking guys. He's got a bit of offense, but he's really a hardworking center. He's like a Drury type guy. I think you mentioned the right kind of player with Cerrato. He was a bit of a wild card. He wasn't anywhere on the list. Like, he was so far down, like it was almost laughable. So the Canes saw something in him that a lot of folks haven't talked about. And I know that Nick Bass, when he saw him at the recent camp, the prospect thing that was going on, development camp, he was quite impressed with Cerrato for sure. One guy I wanted to mention was Semyon Frolov. He's the goalie that the Canes took. And Frolov is a guy that was rated by many as the top goalie available in the draft. And I know there was Medvedev and some other guys that were picked higher. But this guy is really something. Again, he's 6'3". He's another big goaltender. Here's what Corey Pronman said about Frolov. He's a clear NHL athlete with decent size and exceptional lower body quickness to make a lot of difficult saves. He's never out of a play with how quickly he recovers and is able to get across the crease. So he's a guy that getting some excellent words from Pronman, and for sure, he's got raw talent. So again, the Canes are stealing these players. In many cases, they were rated lower down, and we know the story about the Canes and their Russians. One other Russian they took, just to kind of wrap up the Russian side, was this guy, Kurban Limitov. You might have seen him. Again, 6'3". He's a 200-pounder. He skates like mad. He's another one of these huge defensemen. And I know the folks at the development camp said, how many big defensemen do we have? They're huge. So he's another one. And again, he's a guy that looks like he's got a potential future with the Canes. Now, I want to mention one crazy one, because we picked at 221 a player called Filip Ekberg, a Swede. Was playing with the Ottawa 67s last year. Ekberg's a smaller player, 5'10", 165. I had been watching through the draft, and people were coming up in the third round and saying, "Where the heck is Ekberg? Why isn't he drafted? Like, what's going on?" And here we are. We get him at 221. And here's what Kronman said about Ekberg. He was named the MVP of the Under-18 World Championships and was a big reason why Sweden won a silver medal. He's a superb, skilled winger. He makes highly difficult and creative plays with the puck often. He's a great playmaker with a good shot who projects to run a power play. This guy is a heck of a talent. Okay, and we get him at 221. Unbelievable.
I saw some people on X. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he seriously.
I couldn't understand why he fell so low.
You know, when you look at where we started with a 29th pick and then not anything till late in the third round, and Eric volleys that into 3 second-rounders and a high third-round pick. So, you know, it's just these guys are magic. He and Darren York, I think, they really do a clinic on this thing. And so I was out of a kind of what I thought was going to be a boring and disinteresting draft. It turned out to be kind of fun. And, of course, the cupboard is jammed, as we've talked about many times with the Canes, and they added some more players with some outstanding skill. So great job done by the Canes. But, you know, that's futures, and we've got a little bit more interest on what's going to happen with this coming season. And here we go into free agency, trades, and it didn't take long before the free agency luster kind of went away. You know, we had talked a lot about Mitch Marner. He was never really a factor for the Canes. As it turns out, he wasn't interested in Carolina at all. He was only interested in Las Vegas. So the top dog was gone. And then very quickly, one of the other guys who might have been of interest, Brock Besser, signed with Vancouver. So all of a sudden, you're getting into a group of free agents that aren't too exciting. And on the blue, Ekblad was gone. Provorov was gone. I mean, quite frankly, it was a boring look at free agency. So there we go into free agency. And the first thing, of course, the Canes had to deal with was their own. And what did we think about that? Katie, what did you think about the decisions made by Eric on the existing Canes free agents?
Well, I think most Canes fans will agree that it was time to move on from Burns and Orlov, and they went off and signed their deals with the Avalanche and the Sharks, respectively. So it will be interesting on a personal level to watch Burns next season and see what he looks like, because it'll probably seem like almost a totally different player. His role will be different. There's no way he is going to be a top-line player with the Avs having Makar and Taves. So it will be very interesting to see how that goes. And, you know, congratulations to Orlov on getting his nice bag with the Sharks and being a mentor to some of those young guns over there. But with those two gone, the one that I was really excited to see come back as far as the UFAs was Eric Robinson. He just worked his tail off for the Canes, and he was very solid for them no matter what role they put him in. I mean, he started the season for a while up there on that line with KK and Natchez, and they were the top line for the Canes for a long time, and he really brought a lot of that balance and grit to that trio. And then when it came time for him to play a lesser role, whether it was fourth line or wherever he was put, he did that well too. And he just put his head down and brought his lunch pail to the rink every night and did what he needed to do. And I think the Canes really appreciated that and saw the value in that. And so I'm happy they have extended him and brought him back, because you need those types of players to make a deep run in the playoffs. And they needed him this past season for that, and they'll need him again for future playoff runs.
Aaron?
Oh, agree absolutely. And you know, one thing that people will want to pay attention to or bear in mind with Robinson is he's signed for 4 years at $1.7 million. And with the new collective bargaining agreement, if I'm not mistaken, I don't have this in front of me, but the league minimum is going to rise to the $1 million mark, you know, fairly quickly over that as that collective bargaining agreement comes into force. So you're talking about a player who, is they're getting at an incredible value with the rising cap for 4 more years when some of those numbers are going to kick in, and you're going to see players making more than that to play fourth line roles. So that was a good bit of work. The other free agent that I really am happy to see come back, even though he will probably be mostly with the Wolves, is Juha Jaska. I think that he, even though he only came into a couple of games with the Canes, that player has just an incredible work ethic. Another one of those that you just watched him from the get-go and said, well, this guy's a Canes player. He belongs in this system. So somebody, again, that they can have as a potential call-up, somebody that they can bring in. And then I think, they did a good job with another player as well, that would be Tyson Jost. So
yes.
Love him. I love him.
Well, Katie, you had, I had mentioned this on X. You were very strong in our last podcast about Tyson Jost being somebody you really wanted brought back, and I think it was great that they brought him back too, because I honestly believe he should have played in the playoffs. He should have been brought in at different times, and I think he definitely had earned the right. And at the end of the season, that fourth line was really clicking with him on there, and I thought he did a great job. So it's good news. Right on with Robinson. Come on, that's a steal. This guy, I think he's going to get better. Don't forget, he's had kind of a disjointed career up until now, and he's, this was his real chance to kind of find a home. And I think there's more offense that he has to give. I don't know of anyone that gets more chances than Eric does, get those breakaways and all those great chances he gets. So I think if he can maybe spend the summer and, sharpen up his shooting skills, that might be great. Jaska, an interesting thing on Jaska, you might have noticed the second year is a one-way deal. So I thought that was kind of interesting that they decided to do it that way. And again, he's league minimum $750K, but I was ecstatic when they signed Juha Jaska because just like you said, Aaron, man, he just came out and he was a heart and soul guy. And he's not going to hurt you on the ice, and he can play any position, center or the wing. He's just the kind of, depth you want. And with he and Jost, I think they've got a couple of guys that they can just call up anytime and they're good to go. So I think, and again, if they're playing in Chicago, those guys are great mentors as well for some of these young kids that are coming in. So it's good stuff. And of course, the big news, the big signing of Logan Stankoven. How do we feel about that? Katie?
Oh, I'm thrilled. I didn't mention him before because he's technically an RFA extension, not one of our UFAs. But
sure.
I don't think that anybody on Twitter was unhappy with the Stankoven extension. We are thrilled to have him. He's a perfect Cane. He's made to be a Cane. I'm sure last year was tough for him because he had envisioned himself to be a star for a very, very long time and kind of had the rug yanked out from underneath him with the trade. But perhaps looking back on it, and it seems like with the extension, he would agree that it was a rather fortuitous fall into the Canes' lap because as well as he fit the Stars, he fits the Canes even better. And he is another one of those versatile wingers that can play up and down the lineup no matter where. He ended the season with Stahl and Martinook. I would not be surprised to see him back there again next season because he has the engine to keep up with those two and their work ethic and their style of play. But if they needed him up on a second line, he can do that. If they need a break or need to have more of a tough checking line and put Carrier up there, he still has the kind of good attitude that he'll put in a couple of games on the fourth line. He's just tell me what to do, coach, and I'm going to go do it to the best of my ability. And we as Canes fans absolutely love that. So I am very happy to have him back and can't wait to see all of the different ways that he is going to contribute to this team.
Yeah, an interesting thing, Hockey Forecaster wrote this about Stankoven. I thought it was interesting. They said the feisty, undersized forward has the on-ice energy coaches love and a shot that goaltenders dread. I think with Logan, to me, this was a steal. Again, 3, 4, 5 years from now, Logan Stankoven at $6 million, we're going to sit there and go, you got to be kidding me. It's like the deals they've done with, Slavin and again with Seth Jarvis. These deals are going to age extremely well. When you look at Stankoven, I was reading some interesting things in the Kings lately. When they were looking at him last year heading into the league, they saw him as a real contender for Rookie of the Year. They thought this guy is his talent is off the charts. And we haven't seen really what he can do yet. And, he starts to show it on the power play. That's where he's going to get a lot of his points. Obviously, if he's working with the dads, that's a little bit of heavy lifting for him. But he does see action on that 2 power play, and he's very effective. And as we know, he can score. He's got a shot. He can put the puck in the net. And the other thing is, for a guy of his slight size, and I know Eric Tulsky was talking a lot about this, it's just amazing that he'll go to those tough areas and hang out there and comes out with the bruises and the hits and everything else. So great stuff. So you look at where the Canes started. And again, I agree with you, Brent Burns, Dmitry Orlov, it was time. Needed some fresh blood. The other guy that was not re-signed was Jack Roslovic, of course. Roslovic right now is rumored to go to the Maple Leafs, and apparently they're trying to figure out a way to get their dollars down on the cap so that they can make that happen. But I'm okay with Roslovic moving on. Okay, so while that was going on, they're obviously getting the house in order on the Canes side. There were some things happening on the goaltending side. We had talked a little bit about this in our last podcast as well, kind of previewing this and saying they've got to get a third goaltender. Spencer Martin, and Tulsky said some good things about Martin. He was heading off to Russia to play with CSKA, I'll get it right, in Russia. So he was off on a 2-year deal, a good deal for him. So he definitely wasn't going to be a factor, and I don't think he was the right guy anyway. And certainly Dustin Tokarski, appreciate his good effort last year. He wasn't the guy either. And I think the Canes realized that, with the injury challenges of Freddie and at times Piotr, they got to have somebody that can play some games. So first up on the agenda, Aaron, they acquired a former Montreal Canadian in Caden Primo. What can you tell us about Caden?
Well, I haven't seen as much of Primo as some people have because I typically just watch the NHL games. And I mean, I did used to watch the Rocket. They're a fun team to watch. It's gotten a little bit trickier, more expensive to watch AHL games. And if you're watching 2 NHL teams, chances are you don't have time to watch a lot of AHL games. So unless you're getting paid, but just put that out there. No, but during his fill-ins, when he's been called up from the Rocket to take those times in the NHL when one of their other goaltenders has not been available, Primo has done pretty well. Yeah. Last season, he only played 11 NHL games, and the save percentage was not that great. It was an 836 save percentage. But again, these are typical call-up situations. You've got people down, you've got other, people out or something. So it's not like you can look at that and just read everything into that. As we know, it's harder to judge goaltenders strictly from a stat basis. But he plays well. His movements are, he seems to be moving well to get the puck, and he's not, he doesn't play with a lot of panic. He's a very calm goaltender, I would say. Yeah. The previous season, he actually had 23 games in the NHL, and that season he had a .910 save percentage as an NHL goaltender. So his career NHL is an .884, which for a backup goaltender who's going to come up and, play some games for you when your guys are injured, you can't ask for better than that. And as far as how he'll do with the Canes, I can't help but think that because of the Canes' way of playing team defense, that those numbers are going to come up a little bit, that he's not going to be fighting quite as much to, there's not going to be as many high danger chances and so on, and that we've had that discussion as far as maybe that's not always a good thing. But I think for a goaltender like Primo, that's not going to be an issue, and he's going to be just fine. So I'm excited to have him join the Canes from the Habs. The Habs really had reached a point because of their other young prodigy, Jakub Dovish, where they kind of needed to make a decision one way or the other with Primo. And this is a great opportunity for him. certainly to come in and I know he's going to be great for the Wolves. That's not even a question because he was a terrific part of the Habs season this season, and the Rocket. I'm sorry, not the Habs, the Rocket. The Rocket made it quite deep into the playoffs, and it was a lot of that was due to the goaltending they had, not just Brind'Amour, but in general. They've had a really good round of goaltenders in the Rocket, so. I like the pick. I like the acquisition. You cannot complain about a 7th round draft pick being the cost because 7th round draft picks almost never make it to the NHL in the first place. And age wise, he is he's 20. He'll be 26 in August, so he's going to fit right in with the age of the current younger goaltender side. Because we have several both in Chicago, and then of course Kochetkov. So it's going to be a good ad, I think, and I think it's going to be fun to have him come in and play some games at some point. Which we know that during the course of the season, there's almost 100% chance he'll come in for at least a game. So we'll see.
Yeah, I would expect. I mean, he could be around a fair bit of the season, I think, for sure. Here's what Hockey Forecaster said about Primo, and this is interesting. He says he has the ability to shut the door with aplomb, since he's both technically sound and an athletic netminder who can make spectacular saves when required. And here's the good story. His pedigree is off the charts. So we know that his dad is Keith Primo, and Keith, if you might recall, was traded for Rod Brind'Amour. So kind of an interesting history here. What goes around comes around. I'm excited about Primo. I think he's got great upside. And I think he's a guy that, again, brings size. He's got athleticism. I'm really excited to see what he's going to do. And he could really kind of move himself into that number 2 spot. He's been given an opportunity here because we know that Freddie's not going to be around for that much longer. And, maybe this is a chance for him to come in and show what he can do. And he's definitely got the talent. He's got the experience in the minors where he's played extremely well. So yeah, good move. The other guy that they decided to make a move on was Andrei Svechnikov's buddy over in Russia. And of course, that's Amir Miftakov. Miftakov was drafted by Tampa. He played a year in North America, was not particularly successful. He had been playing with Akbars in Russia, came over, then decided to go back. Has been tearing it up in the KHL, and again is a guy that comes in with what the Canes think is some pretty good upside. Now he's on a 2-way deal this year. My suspicion is if it doesn't go particularly well, he'll head back to Russia. So he's a veteran. He's 26, 27 years old. Again, same kind of thing. And so 2 guys. Some more guys to bring into the mix. They think they've got upside. They think they can compete, certainly to be a 3rd goaltender for the Canes and maybe do something in the future. So kind of exciting. And again, a little bit off the charts, right? Miftakov is 25 and he's a 6-footer. So he's not a really big goaltender. So that's a little bit different for the Canes. Okay. Now, so here we go. We've got our goaltending sorted out. We've sorted out the players that they wanted to sign with the Canes, but we still had some positions that we needed to get busy on with the Canes. 2C, of course, has been the Achilles heel for the Canes, and that was a big thing they were going to try to solve. They wanted a scoring winger, and we talked a little bit about this, and we had talked about some of the candidates, not much available. And then they wanted another D-man. They needed another D-man that could play in the top 4. So again, we knew we had lost Burns, we had lost Orlov, but we had Alexander Nikishin coming in, so that's good news. But we still needed another D-man to kind of round out the core. So what were we going to do? So free agency didn't leave us a lot. And so with Aaron Ekblad moving on and Provorov signed, pretty quickly, and he wasn't the guy we were going to look at anyway, there wasn't really much there. I mean, who do you want to put in your top 4? So they had to get busy. And Aaron, what did they do?
Well, they did something I think that surprised a lot of us. They went and they targeted some young defensemen. We've heard the rumblings about them targeting, Bouchard possibly with an offer sheet.
Yeah.
We heard that they were among the groups in on Noah Dobson, who went to my other team, the Habs,
Right.
and they ended up signing the young defenseman from the New York Rangers, K'Andre Miller, and he is a fantastic young defenseman. This was a great decision. I think it's exciting when your general manager doesn't just look at the veteran options and says, what have we got out here that maybe a player that has a lot more potential than he's been able to show so far, but is already really, really good. And so I was really surprised and very excited to see Miller added to the team. I think he's going to be great. It's going to be interesting to figure out just exactly how that deployment's going to work. I know we'll probably be talking about that closer to the season when things get a little bit more, solidified.
Yeah.
But I think it's really, really exciting and based on just when you came into the offseason, a lot of us still thought that, gee, maybe they're going to re-sign Burns for a year, or gee, maybe they're going to do this other thing. So this is much more interesting, and I think it's going to be incredible to watch how this all works.
Katie, what were your thoughts on the deal for K'Andre Miller?
Well, the thing that, of course, stands out when it comes to K'Andre Miller is the fact that he is a left shot defenseman. Yes. Because with the arrival of Nikishin, it seemed like the Canes were set on the left side. Slavin, Nikishin, Jost, good to go. So it shows that the Canes are prioritizing talent over just some sort of, stat like right hand, left hand, making sure that balance, quote unquote, is there. And so the question then becomes who plays on their left side if this is the final composition of the defense. It might not be. There might be something still going on. Who knows? But you don't go out and sign a player like Miller to put him on your third pair defensively. You don't pay that kind of money for them. So I would not be surprised if he actually ends up on the top pair with Slavin. And we've been talking about a long time about how Slavin needs a better D partner. He needs to be with somebody where he's not all just having to babysit out there while play is going on. And I think that Miller offers a really interesting opportunity for him to be kind of like Slavin's apprentice, I guess is how I would put it, in that he has good stick work just like Slavin. He does positioning pretty well, not at Slavin's level, but if he can learn from Slavin, then he can take what he does well and make it better. So I'm excited to see what he can do. And plus with Slavin behind him, it will allow him to open up his offensive game a little bit more. When you look at who he was paired with last season, he started off the season with Adam Fox, who is known for his offensive skill. And so Miller did not have a whole lot of production when he was paired with Fox. And then there were a period of games that he missed and he came back, and the majority of those games he was paired with Borgen, and his offensive game rose quite a bit. He scored quite a few more points in those games that he played with Borgen than he played with Fox. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that he got to be the one who drove play from the blue line more so than his partner did. And so he will get a similar opportunity with Slavin. Slavin has, will get his chances. He's a smart cookie, and we know how he works when he's in the ozone, but his presence will allow Miller to really pinch in when he sees an opportunity or join in on the rush. There are a lot of good clips of how Miller is smart about jumping in and joining on the rush and creating those odd man opportunities for his team. So it's definitely going to be something to keep an eye on. The Canes really believe in him. They would not have negotiated that 8th year, that trade, if they didn't believe that he was not only going to be a long-term solution, but a good, solid, long-term solution, whether top pair or third defenseman, the play driver on that second pair, regardless. So I'm really going to keep my eye on him because I find him very fascinating, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the Canes go about, I guess, rehabilitating a little bit of the regression that has happened for him the past couple of seasons, because that there is a star player in there, and just let Brind'Amour and company get their hands on him, and it's gonna be fun to see how he develops.
Well, I know you had taken a look at some Hockey Viz charts and some other charts as well. Katie, did you see anything that kind of jumped out at you in terms of, Miller? Was there anything that, hey, that's interesting or that's kind of cool or whatever? Did you see anything on the charts that you thought was interesting?
Well, yeah, like I mentioned, when he's paired with somebody who's a little bit more defensive minded, he really does have a good opportunity and eye for creating offense. There's the season summary chart for him that shows who he was paired with more frequently and where his goals and stuff were. And so that was really cool. And then when you look at his offense, where his shots come from, the shot chart looks a lot like Brent Burns' shot chart, but from the left-hand side. It's just so concentrated back at the blue line and in that corner, top corner of the zone. But unlike Burns, he has a lot of shots also where he goes to the net and he pinches, and that's where most of his goals come from. He doesn't score a lot of goals back from the blue line, as you would expect. Those are lower, lower danger shots. But when he does go towards the net and drive the net, he is able to get some more finishing in on those chances. And he had, I think it was 6 goals, 23 points, or 23 assists, and 29 points for the Rangers last season. I wouldn't be surprised if he exceeds that with the Canes this year because of the ice time and the opportunities he's going to be getting if he ends up playing next to Slavin.
Well, a couple of years ago, 22-23, he was really on the right trajectory. He was starting to see his game really take off. And, of course, that's before Peter Laviolette came in and ultimately the wheels came off for the Rangers. But he had 9 goals and 34 assists for 43 points. So definitely a guy that can put up some numbers. He played almost 22 minutes a game. In 22 in the playoffs, he played almost 25 minutes a game. This guy's a horse. So, you got to like it when you've got he and Alexander Nikishin, who are 2 guys who are going to eat minutes. And both of them kind of bring a lot of size. So this is exciting. McKean's had an interesting thing to say at the start of the season when they did their review of the teams, and they said a rangy 6'5" defender who is an exceptional skater. Miller excels at using his speed and massive reach to shut down opposing forwards, to shut down the attack, often eliminating any threat against the Rangers' net. So again, as we've talked a little bit about, he's very good with his stick. He's very good in getting back. He looked like, I've seen a lot of highlights where he actually looks a little bit like Jalen Chatfield. He's one of these guys that has this enormous speed. There was some information from NHL Edge on his skating speed, and he's in the 94th percentile in top skating speed and 89th in bursts over 20 miles an hour. Now, by comparison, Burns was 53rd in skating speed, top skating speed, and 61st in bursts over 20th, 61st percentile. So way, way down. Orlov was 50th in both. So I think we're getting a guy that's going to bring a lot more speed to the mix here. And again, there's questions about Miller. Some folks are wondering about his ability to see the ice, his ability to get those breakout passes from his own zone. Some other things about, how he kind of reads the game and so on. We'll see how that plays out. But I think with the Kane style, and if he's working with a guy like Jacob Slavin, he can make some mistakes. That's no problem. So I think, like you, I'm very excited. Interestingly enough, when the deal was done, the NHL Network had a couple of guys talking about the deal. Stu Grimson, former Hurricane, and of course, also Tony Granato, who coached Miller at Wisconsin. Let's listen to what they had to say.
I think we'll see better hockey from Keandre Miller and the net benefit that has to these Canes on the blue line.
Absolutely, and I had the pleasure of coaching him at Wisconsin. Extremely talented, athleticism, can skate. The thing that is remarkable about him is he's got such a great reach, first of all, so it's hard enough to get by him. And if you do and you beat him, his recovery and his ability to adjust to with his skating ability is really at an elite level. So, great defender. I think the one thing for him offensively, he's going to have an opportunity in Carolina to get some more important offensive minutes. I think Brind'Amour will tell him, hey, I want you to play more. I want you more aggressive in the offensive zone. And he has got a good shot and very talented offensively. So his numbers should go up.
Okay, so the Canes, good start on solving the D. And and they had a good start with this. So, of course, they actually went about and made another move on the defense, kind of quietly, and they signed Mike Riley to a one-year deal, a $1.1 million deal in free agency. This was all going on at the same time, so you had to kind of navigate between trades and free agent signings. Riley's an interesting one. Riley, again, he had done some good work with the Islanders a couple of years ago. You might remember they had their defense was completely decimated, and they brought Riley in to kind of shore it up. And I remember a lot of good things were said about Riley, and he's a guy that folks don't know much about. And what was said about Riley by the hockey forecaster, I think, was interesting. They said he's a college star whose game is finally starting to come together at the NHL level. So he's a guy that took a while to kind of find his way. Excellent complementary defenseman who can be a valuable contributor with the right partners. So I think the idea with Riley was, again, a veteran, low cost. He can be that seventh defenseman. He can come in and fit in with anybody. Solid getting out of his own zone. He's a good skater. So I think, again, a good complimentary move by the Canes to get Riley locked up. So now they had the D done. What are they going to do about center and the scoring forward? So where did they go with the scoring forward? There wasn't much out there. Katie, any thoughts on that one?
I think we all know exactly where they went when it came to the scoring forwards. We're still waiting on a 2C and see how that goes, whether or not KK sticks around for another season. But we got our scoring winger. Nikolai Ehlers was the top free agent that actually made it to market. And everyone was sitting on pins and needles wondering, will he, won't he, where will he? Does he stay in Winnipeg? Does he go somewhere else? Who's offering this? Is it the Capitals? Is it the Avs came up? Where's he going to go? But he's a good fit for Carolina. And the longer the conversation went on, it seemed more and more the good fit in Carolina line was indicating, well, even if he's a good fit, he's not signing with us. But
right.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
He actually did sign.
I said that.
And it's not and I think Aaron even doomed it into existence.
Yes,
if I recall. But with Ehlers signing, it was very interesting, and it's cool because it's obvious that he wants to be a Carolina Hurricane. Yes. The Jets sounds like, especially with that 8th year that they could have used, would have been able to offer him a similar or better deal. And it also sounds like that there were more lucrative offers out there from other teams.
Yes.
But I think that Ehlers wanted a good contract, but he didn't just want any contract. He wanted to go to a place that he felt that he could contribute, but also get opportunity, that he wanted that top line role, that he wanted a chance to really be the key cog in the offense for a team, but still be on a path to playoff success. And Carolina was the team that fit that bill. And I think that's eventually what convinced him to sign here. And it sounds like Brind'Amour made a big pitch that was very meaningful to him. Wouldn't be surprised if Frederik Andersen also helped with being a French Dane. But very excited to see him on the Canes and to see what he is able to do. There's no reason to assume he's going to be anywhere else in the lineup other than stapled right next to Sebastian Aho. So what the two of them can create together hopefully will be very special starting this season and for many seasons to come.
Aaron, thoughts on Nikolai Ehlers?
Well, I said it on X that I really hope, after all of the glowing things Ehlers said about really wanting to come to Carolina, really wanting to play for the Canes and play for these fans, that I hope he never has to pay for an adult beverage in Raleigh, North Carolina, because the fans have been waiting a long time for a player who didn't just end up in Carolina, but who chose Carolina. And when I say a player, I don't mean, obviously they've signed people long term that are very happy to be here. They have homegrown prospects that have come all the way through the system. But for one of literally, like Katie said, the top free agent left by the time free agency opened to choose Carolina, that is a big deal for a team that has had this lingering reputation that nobody wants to sign here. And that was, it's almost like the antidote to what happened with Mikko Rantanen, because, that was another opportunity for the national media to complain and say, nobody wants to sign in Carolina. Nobody wants to go there. You're not going to get a top star or a top free agent. And so Nikolai Ehlers may not be right at that tier of the Rantanen and those types of players, but he's not very far below it. And that is a player that I think that the Canes should be absolutely thrilled and excited to get for this team. And then just his character, his work ethic, the type of player that he is, all of those are qualities that are going to fit just great in Carolina, because it's just not, you don't see players too often that have the kinds of impact on their, with the goal scoring and everything else, who are also, willing to do all the hard work. And no one has ever complained at all about Ehlers' work ethic or his ability to not focus exclusively on scoring, but to be a real team player. So it's a great move.
Well, Ehlers, 8 of his last 9 seasons has scored more than 20 goals. And he's had, he usually gets around 60 points. This is a guy that's going to deliver. And again, he had some of those seasons where he missed action, and he was on definitely a trajectory to score a lot more than 29 goals or 30 goals in the year. I'm excited about Ehlers. One of the things that was discussed recently about Ehlers and that we see is he has an ability to carry the puck into the zone effectively and make plays on his own. He's one of those guys that can create a goal out of nothing, and I've seen a number of highlights showing that. I think the Canes have missed very, very desperately the ability to get into the opposition zone on the power play when Nate just left. He was the trigger of that. He was the catalyst that really made it happen. And I think one of the reasons that they really wanted to go after Ehlers is because he does that well. And so he brings that capability on the power play to really bring the puck up the ice quickly and to get in there and make something happen. And I think that's going to be exciting. You mentioned the quality of guy. I mean, I was very interested watching the interview with him and the discussions with Ehlers when he talked about, look, he called so many people as he was kind of preparing to make his decision, right? So he was talking to players, he was talking to, friends, he was talking to whoever would talk to him to say, hey, I'm looking at these teams. What can you tell me? What do you think? And, fortunately for Canes fans, a lot of those folks spoke glowingly about the Canes and, of course, Coach Brind'Amour. So clearly, he did his homework. He made the decision to come. It's kind of the antithesis of our man Rantanen. So all of a sudden, you got a guy that definitely wants to be here, and he's going through the effort to be here. So thank you very much. And I think that's great. And, you look at him and you also look at K'Andre Miller. And Miller's a great guy too. I've seen a lot of things on him. He's extremely well liked. He's kind of a soft-spoken guy. And one of the things he said that really caught my attention was he said, I was really excited about signing this long-term deal because that's going to set up my mom as well for her future. And, he said she gave up so much for me to be an NHL player, and I just want to repay her. And I thought that was, to me, that's outstanding. And again, what are the Canes doing? They're filling that roster with people that, they're just quality people in the room. And they're going to fight. And, they talked a lot about, all those guys in the room have one thing on their mind. How the heck are we going to beat the Panthers? So now these new folks are going to come in and they're going to start drinking the Kool-Aid as well. So the Canes did all this. They did lose a player along the road. We didn't really talk about this, but they did lose Scott Morrow in that K'Andre Miller deal. I think in the end, you look at the body of work of Eric Tulsky, signing all these players on the Canes roster, signing some new folk, and then, of course, trading for Miller. I think it's pretty good job done so far. Aaron, thoughts?
I think there's really no complaints about Tulsky's first full offseason as a general manager. I mean, we know that he had his hands were really full last year to come in, from the position of having been the assistant GM, and then suddenly he's the GM, and he had to handle, the draft and the trade deadline, and especially all of those departing UFAs, because, we really didn't lose that many this year compared to last season, the number of players, and all of the juggling that was going on while he was also trying to negotiate with Jake Gensel. I know he got a lot of criticism for that, but this is the first offseason where he's really been fully in the driver's seat from the get-go. There was no transition, no handover, nothing like that. I look at this and say, you really can't give this any lower of a rating than an A, because he's done a stellar job, and he's done it thinking outside the box a little bit, not doing the kinds of things that most general managers would do sort of as a standard operating procedure. He didn't look to fill the roster with the same types of players that were leaving. He didn't, and so everything that he's done, I think, has upgraded the Canes and improved their chances of getting farther in the playoffs. And that's what you want to see with an offseason of this importance, because we know that the Canes really want to keep pushing. And, it's not good enough to make it to the Eastern Conference Final and just win one game. And we know what their competition is. Barring anything really unforeseen happening, the Florida Panthers are going to be the biggest obstacle standing between the Canes and the Stanley Cup, for as until they reach the point where they can get past them. These are the kind of moves you want to see. You want to see the kind of moves that are going to give them the scoring, the defense, and just shoring up all of those areas that need to be fixed. So I love what's been done so far.
Yeah, and just to add to that, and I'll give you a shot at this too, Katie. I think one of the things that Eric does, and we always have to remember that any moves that Eric and his crew make are analytically based in a huge fashion, right? So, they go through a lot of analysis. They do a lot of kind of investigation about the players, what they're like, what they can expect from these players as people and so on. But if we look at what the Canes did in the offseason last year, they brought a lot of players in and most of them stuck. It's incredible, right? They re-upped most of them. And they contributed extremely well and in a very fast fashion to the Hurricanes. So that if Eric's got his eye on somebody, it's very likely, other than the opportunistic deal for Rantanen, I think it's very likely that he's got his signature on it. And I think you're right with what you're saying, Aaron. This is his first chance to really do it. And again, long-term contracts, getting folks, look at the number of folks who are like on several year deals. It's incredible. His work over the next few seasons is going to be pretty easy. He's got so many folks locked up, right? And it's quite a story. So, Katie, what did you think about Eric's work? Obviously, Aaron and I are pleased. What are you thinking?
Oh, yeah. I think he has definitely done very well, him and the entire group, because that it's a team effort. He might be the captain of the team when it comes to this sort of thing, but there's a lot of input from Dundon, from Brind'Amour, from Gleason, from the whole crew, the scouting department. So it just shows what a really unique team that they have, that they work together hand in hand so seamlessly. Whether it's the scouting for the at the different minor league levels, or it's looking into current players and saying who would fit the system, because that's what's so key right now, is finding players who fit the system. And the one thing that I know I personally have gotten caught up in before is worrying about players being too samey for the Canes. And I think there's some validity to that. But at the same time, Stankoven is a perfect fit for the Canes, but you can't say that he's super samey in the way he plays. You can make the jokes about, oh yeah, he's another short king or whatever. But the way he plays is not the same way that Jarvis plays, is not the same way that Jackson Blake plays. He is his own his own player with his own particular style. That is a Canes hockey player. And I think that Ehlers, we're going to be saying the same thing about him. He is a Canes hockey player. But what Ehlers is going to bring, I forgot to mention the Hockey Viz charts with Ehlers. What Ehlers is going to bring is that he will go to whatever part of the ice in front of the net to create chances. His shot spread is across the board. It is not concentrated in any one given spot. And his success, he has good finishing. Wait, a Canes player with good finishing? Perish the thought. But that's the sort of thing that Tulsky's looking for, is he's not looking for, I want somebody who is a clone of Sebastian Aho, just a winger. This is somebody who is going to come in and bring that little extra something. He still fits the system, but he brings that little extra touch that not only is going to make the Canes as a whole better, but is going to elevate the other players that play with him and make them better. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Aho having a career year on the score sheet, because he has someone like Ehlers to play with, who will help Aho, motivate Aho to shoot more and motivate Aho to finish better. And Jarvis or Svetcher, whoever else is on the line with him. So that's part of the genius of Tulsky and the entire crew, is bringing in people that are going to be good fits, but not just be good individual fits, but good fits on their line, good fits on their pair, good fits for the team overall. And so at this point, I'm just going to say I'm going to give him an A-, just because I think he's got other stuff cooking. And I want to have room to bump that grade up even higher when he pulls another rabbit or two out of his hat, whether it's before the start of the regular season or before the trade deadline or whatever. So I'm doing that just for my own needs of being able to boost him up a little bit more as the season goes along.
And Katie, that's a great segue, because if we look at where the Canes are right now and putting together a kind of an analysis of the lineup with Puckpedia, 23 players under contract, $84.8 million, okay, which means we've got $10.6 million still in the coffers. And that, it doesn't include any players that might get traded, which would add to that. So, you take a look at the roster. The roster's deep. The roster, as I had it together, had William Carrier as the 13th forward, for goodness sakes. And, because you've got Jackson Blake, who's got to go down to that fourth line. So it's kind of crowded. And the D, 7 men on the D and 3 goaltenders, and you're still sitting there with lots of room to go. So what takes Eric and puts him up to that A+ side? We know that the discussion that has been raging for so long is, gosh, what are we going to do with that 2 center spot? So Eric's done great work getting the scoring forward. He's brought in, I think, a very exciting defenseman and given up very little, if you think about it. I mean, he gave up some draft picks, which we had picked up from Dallas, more or less, and he gave up Scott Morrow, who really, frankly, did not look like he was going to have a future with the Hurricanes. And I know that sounds kind of, challenging, but he just looked like he was going to be struggling to be a Cane, or certainly this year didn't have a spot. So, so there you are, and you've got that lineup ready to go. A lot of folks have been talking about, here's the move they should make, and this is the guy they should get, and we talked about Larkin and Thompson and McTavish and all kinds of guys. These folks aren't available. Don't even think about it. They're not leaving their teams, because all those teams are, they're going to be pressing to do stuff. And if you were going to trade for them, you'd give away, a huge, huge amount. So where does that leave the Canes? It's kind of a tough place. And I know, kind of following it on X, people are tripping and falling all over the place. They're really struggling to try to find something that makes sense. What are we thinking about this? Aaron?
Well, you bring up the discussions on X, and I know I've been kind of pulling my hair out a little bit here and there with some of them, because there's a lot of fans that seem to think that Eric Tulsky can just drive over to the 2C store and load up the back of the truck. There's no such thing. I'm sorry to tell you, it doesn't exist. But the other thing is, like you say, Tom, a lot of these players are not available, especially not right now.
No.
The key for the Canes is going to be patience, because they're going to need to wait until like Katie was talking about, how important is it to have a player that fits the Canes?
Yes.
Not just fits the spot on the roster, but fits the Canes, And I've gone through some of these players with, back and forth into discussions, and I've said, Tage Thompson, sure, he's a great player. He's absolutely a great player. He spent half of his games last season at wing because his defensive capacity is kind of not there. I mean, is he a disaster on defense? No, but does he play Kane style defense?
No.
I think the answer to that is very clear to anybody who's ever watched Buffalo play a hockey game, So those are the kinds of things where you're not going to give up. Here, let's fill a giant box with all of our best prospects and draft picks and throw in a couple of roster players. You're not going to do that for a player like Thompson who isn't the perfect fit.
Yes.
As the season wears on, you have a lot of teams right now that want to replicate what the Capitals did in terms of a rebuild, and they think they're close enough to do that. Yes. So they didn't sell this summer. They're not selling their players because they really believe they're this close to making the playoffs and they want to get there. And, there's too many teams in that list right now because statistically they can't all make it. So what's going to happen is you get between American Thanksgiving and the trade deadline. And don't forget, we have the Olympics in there too, which is going to change some things in terms of injuries and players maybe not being able to come back and play. So once we get through some of that chaos of the season, you're going to have some teams that look at their roster and look at where they are in the standings and say, okay, we're not going to make it. And now is the time to move some of these pending UFAs or make a deal for a pending RFA who isn't planning to sign long-term. We got maybe tough negotiations with a young player here and there. That's when the Canes are going to strike because Tulsky's got his eye on some targets for the Canes that probably aren't even on any of our lists. And he'll make those moves when it makes sense to make them. He's not going to make them ahead of time.
Katie?
I couldn't have said it any better. It's just a lot of patience, I think. And, if we start the season with Kotkaniemi as 2C, then we start the season with Kotkaniemi as 2C. We got to the Eastern Conference Finals last season with arguably not as talented a roster as we are going to start this season with KK as the 2C. So if KK is the 2C, then great. I just hope that Brind'Amour leaves him as the 2C and perhaps gives him a little bit more ice, if not for him as much as for the other wingers, because we have so many talented wingers. Only 2 wingers can play with Aho. That's how the math works.
Right.
3 forwards on the ice. Unless they want to play a 4-1 system, which even with Slavin back there is the one I don't think they are going to do, only 2 wingers can play with Aho, which means that 2 other wingers have to play with KK, and that still leaves an excess of really talented wingers because we are blessed with good wingers, especially young wingers. Sure. So just to give those guys, to give Svetch or Stankoven or Blake or Hall, whoever, Robinson even has shown that he can play up there. Whoever it is, give them more time, give them opportunity to score, then even better. We'll be fine with KK's at 2C, and we'll evaluate where the team's at. As Aaron said, along the road of the season, along the journey, and then sometime between American Thanksgiving and trade deadline, if something has to change, then we'll have a clearer picture, not only of where the Canes are at, but where the rest of the NHL is at.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And you look at a Boston, I mean, a lot of folks have looked at the Bruins. You look at a Boston Bruins squad, they've got Pavel Zacha, who would be an interesting ad. They've got Elias Lindholm. Could we bring him back to Carolina? Depending on how his game kind of tracks. He's been sliding a little bit in recent years, but maybe he'll get back on track. But those kind of guys could be the kind of players that could help. I know your target, Dylan Larkin, is always on the radar for us. If the Wings have another one of their lame duck seasons, maybe he'll want out, and maybe he'll be a guy we could pick up as well. And I think he'd fit the Canes style quite nicely. These guys, I think, could all play for the Canes. But I think to your point, Aaron, talking about a lot of these players is foolish because they aren't Carolina Hurricanes type players, and they are not going to be brought in. If Eric doesn't think they fit to a T, then they won't be part of the Canes mix. Will the Canes sit around with $10 million until trade deadline, which would be worth millions? I mean, a massive amount at that stage. I'm not sure. I think Eric will do something else this summer. I'm not sure it's going to be some kind of huge move. He might make a move for someone like maybe a Lucas Reichel. I've talked about him before. That kind of player, somebody that could come in and compete for a spot. Who knows? He's going to be out there. He's going to be trying to find somebody else he can bring in, and we'll see how it goes. But in any case, he's in a good situation. Once things start to turn for some of these teams, he'll be there. He'll be ready, and he's going to have the assets. He's going to have the cap room, and he's going to have the prospects and of course the draft picks to work with. So far, I mean, a great situation, and I think the team. Could very well start with Kotkaniemi. And I know, Aaron, you've talked a lot about KK and his good work 5-on-5. I think a lot of folks misinterpret him because of the eye test, but he stacks up pretty good against a lot of the centers in the league in his role. And if he had a little bit more offense, this conversation wouldn't even be happening. So if he could get up to 45, 50 points even, I think we'd see a completely different story with Kotkaniemi. And you know what?
Sure.
Maybe he'll have a summer where he works hard and says, I'm going to prove these folks wrong. He's still on a good friendly deal for the Canes. Of course, each year it gets better. And the other thing that with Kotkaniemi, we have to consider is that his future as a third line center could be a good one with the Canes. And we've talked about this before, is that, okay, he may not be the 2C because of his offensive shortcomings, but he definitely has the acumen to be a 3C. And at $4.8 million in 3 or 4 years, that's not a problem. So I'm kind of with you guys. I'm not in a hurry to move Kotkaniemi. A lot of folks just want him out for the purpose of getting him out. And I'm not one of those guys for sure. And it's not just because you are a big fan of his, Aaron. I think he's a valuable player as well. And I think, the frustration with me, and I think with a lot of us, is that, he's had periods where he's really looked the part. He's been great. So, you think of the start of last year, you mentioned Robinson, Katie, moving up the lineup, he and Robinson and they were solid. They played well. And they were delivering offense. And gosh, all of them were contributing. So again, it's kind of just finding that confidence and that space and getting him going. And I believe the Canes may just decide to start with him. That might be the decision. And one thing for sure, we know that Eric and his team is not going to be making moves just for the purpose of making moves. So exciting stuff. The other discussion that comes up occasionally on X is should the Canes get a right shot D? And you mentioned this as well, Katie. Should they be getting a right shot D? Because, of course, they like righties and lefties together and all this kind of stuff. Any thoughts on that?
It's just a matter, again, of the price is right. You don't get rid of KK for a 2C just to get rid of KK and have a change. You don't bring in a right-handed D just because you want to have 3 lefties and 3 righties. It's got to be the right person who fits the system, and it will also be a good balance for whoever whoever their D partner is. Whether it's somebody for Slavin, somebody for Miller, somebody for Nikishin. I guess that would mean Jost would be the odd man out.
Yes.
But that's just kind of the question there. So I find that less likely unless the Canes move on from Jost, because you don't sit Jost. He's not the type of player to hang around as a 7th D just waiting for somebody to get injured. He has a role that's very valuable, that if you're not going to play him, there is a team who will. And I'm doubtful that happens. But again, for the right-handed D, I'm sure they would probably go ahead and do that. But I find it doubtful that particular move is going to happen anytime soon.
Aaron?
I would agree with that. I'd agree with that because I think that's kind of what we're hearing in the discussions about Miller. They were talking about, would Miller play his off wing because he said he was up for the challenge. On the other hand, they know that Slavin can play on the right. And when you talk about Jost, he's another player that can also play on the right and has done so. So
Yes.
it's not like they don't have defensemen that can do this. I think that's one of those areas where it hasn't been Rod Brind'Amour's comfort zone to play a defenseman on his off wing, but it doesn't mean it can't be done. And so, that's something that the team might be looking at and saying, you know what, it's okay. We're gonna do this, and it's gonna be just fine because some of these guys have some experience playing on the right. So and I believe, I don't remember. I'd have to ask some of our Russian friends, but I believe that Nikishin has also played.
Oh yeah, he's
right
played
at times
right
before too.
Yes.
So
Yes,
and it's very common in Russia for a player to play on the offside from his shot. So.
Yeah.
Who knows what they're exactly planning to do? They may try everybody and just see who fits best. So, but I don't see them, like Katie said, unless there was the perfect RHD fit for the Canes that was too good of an opportunity to pass up. And right now, I'm looking out there at who's available. I don't see anyone like that. So I don't think that they're going to be making a move in that area. They could surprise us, but.
You know the names. I mean, it's Rasmus Andersson and Erik Karlsson are the two names that come up the most. Anderson's not coming to Carolina, number one.
No, Andersson wants Vegas.
We don't need Karlsson. So, frankly, those two guys, in my mind, don't make any sense. Quick point on the
Canes,
no, not for the Canes. Two quick points. One of them is that I don't know if you remember, but Brett Pesce played left side with Justin Falk. It's probably 4 or 5 years ago, before Falk was traded to St. Louis. And I remember watching those guys, and they were tremendous. Pesce was outstanding on the left side as a right shot guy. And again, a lot of teams do that. So it's not like the Canes are asking folks to do something which is completely and totally unnatural. One thing it does, and this is interesting, is that that left shot guy is going to have a better opportunity offensively because they can slide into the center of the ice very, very easily from that right side and get a great shot. So there's great opportunity on the offensive side because that's normally how it's done on the power play anyway. So it's good. So I think there's a real interesting opportunity here. A lot of those guys can play on the opposite side. And the other thing I was going to mention is that Shane Gostisbehere, interestingly enough, his analytics for last year defensively were his best. That was his best defensive year in the National Hockey League. And so, he's been working on closing his gaps. He's working on being more effective defensively. He even killed penalties at different points when we had injuries.
You made me laugh there, Tom, when you were talking about increased offense as from, a defenseman playing on his off wing. I had the sudden thought, and it made me laugh. Maybe this is how Jacob Slavin finally gets an Norris.
There you go. Nice.
Yeah.
If he plays on his off wing and suddenly gets all these great scoring opportunities, he's got a decent shot,
Well, guys, we've covered a ton of ground here. And I think it's been a lot of fun, of course, to go through this. More to be done by Eric. I think it's going to be quiet for a while. I think a lot of the folks are heading off to maybe get a break after the madness of finishing the season, and then, of course, the draft and free agency and trades and so on. Any closing thoughts before we wrap it up? Aaron, closing thoughts?
I think that the Canes have given us, reason to look forward to next season. I think it's going to be exciting to see how all these pieces fit together. I can't wait to see Nick Ehlers in a Canes uniform, and the same thing for K'Andre Miller. I think that he's going to be a great fit with the boys, and he's, especially given that he's right in the age with some of our younger troublemakers, it should be a lot of fun to see him fitting in the locker room. And it feels like an injection of energy that they needed. I think that, last season's team was very good. There's no question that they outperformed expectations. But like you said, some of the players that have moved on, it was kind of time for that sort of change to be made. And, I guess the only thing I'm still looking at is that, given how much everyone who was with the team last year contributed, I do hope that Jack Roslovic will find a good landing spot. He's a good guy too, and I hope he ends up somewhere good. So that's it for me.
Katie?
That pretty much sums it up from my point of view as well. I'm definitely going to be passing the time throwing out some data or some stats about different players, or asking, who do you think here or there. Just, it's fun to interact with other Canes fans, and I really appreciate that community that we have over on X and all of the crazy ideas we like to bounce off of each other and react to news and that sort of thing. And so that will definitely help pass the time as we wait for the days to tick by and for the next piece of news to come to us. But other than that, just excited for what's to come every little bit, whether it's the training camp or that sort of thing. It'll be here before we know it. So just going to enjoy the process along the way.
Yeah, and of course, prospect showcase, training camp, and then of course the season starts. I look at some of the changes that have happened as the kind of season went along, and the Rantanen trade and everything that happened there. And I think so much about, the fortune we have in getting Logan Stankoven. I got to tell you, I think he kind of typifies the Hurricanes in every way. And a guy that says, I wanted to sign a long-term deal right from the get-go. I mean, they asked him as he was heading off for his summer, and they said, would you like to get a contract done? He said, absolutely. I want to be here like forever. I mean, that's quite a statement. And now Nikolai Ehlers, making a long-term deal and signing on to the Canes, and K'Andre Miller, 8-year deal with the Canes, and looking forward to a new opportunity in his life. This is all good stuff, folks. And in a world that's noisy and a lot of things that you don't want to hear going on every day, this is the good stuff that we want to hear. And good people joining the Canes and continuing to build what I think is a first-class organization. So great summer so far. I mean, we'll be chatting again through the summer for sure as things unfold, but things will quiet down for a little while. We've had a hectic period throughout the season and certainly into the playoffs. But we'll be back, I'm sure, in the not-too-distant future. And again, for all the folks who've been watching or listening, of course, we're so delighted you would spend time with us. And as Katie said rightfully, we love to connect with those of you on X as well. Please reach out to us. If you have any comments, anything you'd like to say to the folks, to any of us today, please leave those in the comments section down below. If you like this episode, please press the like button. And of course, if you want to be alerted of future episodes of Storm Tracker and have a chance to hear the great insight of these two fine ladies and myself, please press the subscribe button and the bell, and we'll definitely make sure you're made aware of them when they're released. So, again, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll look forward to getting together with you real soon, right here on Storm Tracker.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like, subscribe, and tell your friends for everything with the Canes you need. Storm Tracker.